The sky over the colony was dark and heavy. Snowflakes fell like silent whispers covering broken roads and rusted buildings. The wind howled through the alleys, freezing everything it touched. People walked fast, heads down, hands deep in pockets. No one wanted to stop. No one wanted to see. In a narrow back street behind a market that had closed for the night, a small figure crouched beside a trash bin. She was shaking. Her thin arms hugged her knees, and her head was covered with what looked like a piece of old curtain. It did nothing to stop the cold. Her name was Renia. She was not from this planet. Her skin was a soft violet color, and her silver eyes glowed faintly in the dark. She was an alien, one of the forgotten, one of the unwanted. Her fingers, too numb to feel, pulled a dirty blanket from a trash pile. It smelled bad, but she pressed it close to her chest. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her stomach made no sound anymore. Only her teeth chattered, and her lips had turned a pale blue. People passed her. They didn't stop. A man walked by, wrapped in a thick coat. He glanced at her once, then walked faster. A woman carrying food saw her too, but quickly turned her head away. No one helped. No one spoke. That's when a soft hum broke the silence. A hoverbike slowed at the alley's entrance. Its lights cut through the snow. The rider parked, turned off the engine and stepped off. Heavy boots crunched on the icy ground as he walked closer. His name was Jace. He was human, tall, tired, and covered in grease. His hands were rough, his face unshaved. He had just finished work at the lower docks. His shoulders ached. All he wanted was to get home, eat something warm, and sleep. But then, he saw her. At first, he thought she was a child, so small, curled up like a ball. But as he moved closer, he realized she was not a child, just a girl too thin, too weak, too cold to stand tall. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. Her eyes met his. She didn't speak. She didn't run. She had no energy left. Jace stood, there for a moment, unsure. He looked at her. She looked away. Then slowly, Jace removed the blanket from his own shoulders. It wasn't new, but it was warm and dry. Without a word, he knelt down and gently wrapped it around her. Renia flinched. No one had touched her gently in a long time. "It's okay," he said, his voice low and calm. "You're freezing." She didn't answer. She couldn't believe it. A human helping her? "Come on," he added. "I've got a place nearby, not much but warm. You'll die out here." She blinked. His words were simple, but her brain was too slow to catch all of them. He stood up and held out his hand. She stared at it for a long moment. Then slowly she reached out. Her fingers shook as they touched his glove. He helped her to her feet. She almost fell. Without asking again, he picked her up gently. She was light, lighter than she should have been. Skin and bones. No more than 40 kilos. He placed her on the back of his hoverbike, tied the blanket tighter around her, and started the engine. As they rode through the snowy streets, Renia leaned against his back. Her eyes closed. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, she felt warmth, not just from the blanket, but from the way he didn't look at her like she was trash. Jace didn't speak during the ride, but he kept one hand behind him, making sure she didn't fall. His garage was small, built from scrap metal and old parts, but it had heat, and a door that locked. He opened it carefully and carried her inside. He laid her down on an old couch and covered her with another blanket. She didn't move. Her eyes were half closed, but still watching him. He moved to the kitchen corner and turned on the heater. Then, he poured water into a small kettle and placed it on the burner. She watched as steam began to rise. "You hungry?" he asked. She nodded, barely. He opened a pack of dry noodles, added spices, and cooked it in silence. When the food was ready, he brought the bowl to her and handed her a spoon. She took it with both hands. Her fingers were shaking so much that half the spoon spilled. Still she smiled. A weak, tiny smile. He smiled back. For a long time there was no sound except the bubbling pot and her soft breathing. Then she whispered, her voice hoarse and dry. "Why?" Jace didn't answer right away. He looked at her, really looked, and said, "Because no one else did." The small garage was quiet except for the sound of soft breathing and the low hum of an old heater. Outside the wind still howled, but inside there was warmth. Faint warmth. Enough to feel like safety. Rinya lay curled under the heavy blanket, on the old couch. She didn't dare move too much. It felt like a dream, and she feared if she made a sound the dream would end. She had spent too many nights sleeping under open skies, under broken rooftops, inside dumpsters. Too many nights hungry, wet, and invisible. Now someone had given her a blanket, food, and something even more rare. Quiet kindness. Jace sat nearby, working on a broken engine core. He didn't ask questions. He didn't demand answers. He just worked with his hands, glancing at her now and then to make sure she was still breathing. She watched him. The human was not handsome in a clean way. His beard was uneven. His clothes were stained. His boots were scratched. But he moved with a calm strength, like someone who didn't need words to show who he was. A plate of warm bread and soup sat beside her. She had already eaten half the bowl of noodles earlier, but he brought her more. She hadn't tasted real food in a long time. She picked up a piece of bread, slowly chewing, afraid it might disappear. Her eyes kept looking at the door, expecting someone to burst in. Maybe a soldier, maybe a hunter, maybe a cruel stranger, wanting to take her away again. But no one came. Jace looked up from his engine and asked, "Soup okay?" She nodded. "Yes. Warm. Good." He smiled a little and wiped his hands with a rag. She studied him carefully. Humans were always loud and sharp when she saw them in the city. This one was soft. Rough hands but gentle eyes. After a while she tried to speak more. "My name, Rinya." Jace looked over, surprised but not shocked. "Rinya," he repeated, slowly, making sure to say it right. "I'm Jace," she smiled weakly. "Jace." Then silence again, but a softer kind. A kind where two people didn't need to talk every second. Jace got up and went to a shelf full of scrap parts and boxes. He pulled out a small container and walked over to her. "Hold out your hands," he said gently. She hesitated, but obeyed. He opened the container. It was a soft healing salve. He slowly began rubbing it into the cracked skin on her fingers. Her body flinched, not from pain, but from surprise. No one had touched her like that before. Not without hurting her. "This will help with the frostbite," Jace explained. "Your fingers, they're bad." Rinya looked at her hands. They were swollen, purple in places, the skin peeling. She felt shame. "I'm dirty," she whispered. "Ugly." Jace stopped. He looked straight into her eyes. "No, just hurt. That's different." Rinya didn't know what to say. No one had ever told her that. For a few minutes he finished cleaning her wounds. Then he offered her a clean towel and pointed to a corner where there was a wash sink and a curtain. "You can wash. Water's warm. I'll stay over here." She took the towel slowly and nodded. Behind the curtain, she washed herself, as best she could. Her skin stung, but she didn't cry. Instead, she stared at her reflection in the small mirror. She barely recognized herself. Thin, scarred, eyes wide with hunger, but not dead. When she came out, wearing the oversized shirt Jace had left for her, she looked less like a ghost. Her violet skin was now clean. Her silver eyes still looked unsure but brighter. He had set up a small bedroll on the floor for himself. The couch was hers now. "You sleep here," he said. "I'll be nearby, door's locked, no one's getting in." She hesitated. "Why, help me?" Jace thought for a moment. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Maybe because I've been kicked around too." And maybe because you looked like you needed someone. Her lips trembled. She lowered her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." He nodded once. "Sleep. Tomorrow, we'll figure things out." She lay down on the couch. The blanket was warm. The air was soft, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt safe. She stared at the ceiling, then turned toward him and asked one last question before sleep came. "You good man?" Jace chuckled softly and replied, "I try to be." And Rinia closed her eyes, still afraid, still unsure, but with a tiny spark of hope blooming in her chest. Morning light leaked through the cracked window of Jace's garage. The heater still hummed, and the air inside was warm and calm. Outside, the world was waking up. Distant voices, engines rumbling, doors sliding open. But in this small metal room, time felt slower. Rinia was already awake, sitting silently at the edge of the couch. The oversized shirt she wore draped off one shoulder. Her violet skin looked better, no longer dry and cracked. But her eyes, they still carried fear. Jace was asleep on the floor, wrapped in an old blanket, one arm resting over his eyes. She watched him. In her old life, on the streets, in hiding, she never let anyone near her while she slept. But last night, she had fallen asleep in front of a human, and yet nothing bad happened. No pain, no shouting, just warmth. It scared her more than cruelty ever did. She reached up to touch her shoulder, and that's when it slipped. Her shirt collar moved, revealing a strange burned-in symbol on her neck. The mark was dark and twisted. Sharp curves formed, a pattern that looked more like a brand than a tattoo. She quickly covered it again, but Jace had already seen it. He had woken just in time to catch a glimpse, and his eyes went wide. He sat up slowly, not wanting to scare her. "What's that on your neck?" he asked softly. Rinia froze. Her hands pulled the shirt tighter. Nothing. Jace didn't push. But inside, he knew that mark. He'd seen it in old bounty files and underground news feeds. It was the symbol of the Gruk Syndicate, a violent alien cartel known for slavery, trafficking, and worse. That brand meant only one thing. She had belonged to them once. He didn't say a word. He stood, walked to the other side of the garage, and pretended to fix an old plasma torch. But his mind raced. How did she escape? And were they still looking for her? Meanwhile, Rinia curled back into herself, heart pounding. She thought maybe he would tell her to leave now. Maybe he would sell her out. But the words never came. Instead, Jace said calmly, "I'm going out to grab some supplies. You'll be okay here?" She blinked, confused. "You trust me?" "I'm trusting you more than I should," he said with a tired smile. "But yeah, door locks from outside, just in case." She gave a small nod. Once he left, Rinia wandered around the garage. There were shelves full of tools, boxes labeled in old Earth languages, and a dusty corner with photos, some of Jace, younger, standing with friends. One photo showed a human woman smiling beside him. Her arm was around his shoulder. She looked happy. Rinia touched the edge of the frame gently. Did he lose her? She sat back down, wondering why this man, who had already known loss, would risk helping someone like her. Back in the city, Jace walked through the market square trying to act normal. But inside, he was worried. He stopped at a junk stall and paid for parts he didn't really need. Then he pulled out his old datapad and, under a locked signal, searched the Gruk Syndicate symbol. The results confirmed what he feared. The mark on Rinia's neck matched an older model of branding used mainly for special property. Some of those marked aliens had unique biology, rare abilities, or just fetched high prices for entertainment or experiments. He felt his jaw tighten. She had been someone's prisoner, someone's toy, and now she was here, in his home. He looked up. The market was full of bounty hunters. Some had scanners, some had cybernetic eyes. He bought a new thermal blanket, tucked it under his coat, and made his way back without speaking to anyone. When he returned to the garage, Rinia was sitting on the floor trying to repair a broken drone with shaky hands. "You do tech?" he asked. She nodded shyly. "Learned to fix things. It kept me useful." He crouched down beside her. "You're not a tool. You don't have to prove anything." Her lips parted, but no sound came. No one had ever said that to her before. He placed the new blanket next to her. "This one's softer. Figured you might like it." She touched it with care, as if it were made of gold. Then she looked at him and whispered, "You saw the mark?" He nodded. "You know what it means?" "I know enough." "Then, why am I still here?" Jace looked her in the eyes. "Because no one should ever wear that mark, and because I don't turn away from people who need help." Rinia bit her lip, and for the first time, a tear rolled down her cheek. Not from fear, but from relief. She pulled the new blanket around her shoulders and said softly, "Thank you, again." Jace smiled, even though his heart was heavy. He didn't say it out loud, but he knew trouble was coming. If the Grux Syndicate ever found out she was still alive, they would come. And this time, they would bring fire. The night felt heavier than usual. Clouds moved across the moon, and the wind outside Jace's garage had fallen quiet. Almost too quiet. The streets outside were still, like something was waiting. Even the old junk piles didn't creak tonight. Inside the garage, the small heater buzzed softly. Rinia sat curled on the couch, holding a cup of warm broth between her hands. She had stopped shaking so much, but her eyes still scanned the corners of the room like a hunted animal. Her back never faced the door. Jace sat at his workbench. Tools were scattered in front of him, but he wasn't fixing anything. His eyes were on the door, his ears alert. He had felt it all day. Something was coming. They both had. Earlier that afternoon, he noticed a strange drone hovering near his roof. It wasn't city security. It was unmarked. Fast. Silent. It disappeared before he could grab his jammer gun. He didn't tell Rinia, but she had seen his face change when it happened. Now, hours later, they both pretended to relax. But the air was tight. Every tick of the old wall clock sounded like a warning. Then it happened. Bang, bang, bang. 3 loud knocks at the garage door. Not the soft knock of a friend. Not the confused knock of a customer. No. These knocks were sharp, demanding, loud enough to rattle the old bolts in the hinges. Rinia froze. Jace stood slowly, quietly, and motioned her to move behind the supply shelf. She obeyed without a word, clutching the blanket to her chest as she hid herself. The knocking came again, louder this time. "Open up," a voice growled. "We know she's in there." Jace walked to the control panel beside the door and activated the outside camera. 3 figures stood outside, 2 large aliens with bladed armor and thick necks. And in the middle, a tall, thin man with metal eyes and a long black coat. Grux, bounty hunters. Jace's jaw clenched. He pressed the intercom button. "Garage is closed. Come back in the morning." The metal-eyed man stepped closer to the camera. "We're looking for stolen property. Female, violet skin, about this tall." He held up his hand. "Dangerous. Escaped from syndicate care. You've seen her, haven't you?" Jace forced a laugh. "You think I've got space for guests in this dump?" The man's tone shifted. Colder now. "Lying to us is a crime, human. You'll lose more than your license." Jace looked back at the shelf where Rinia crouched in silence. Her eyes were wide, her lips trembling. He turned back to the panel. "Get lost," he said flatly. He pressed the security lock, and a loud mechanical clank echoed through the room as the door sealed tight. Outside, the 3 bounty hunters didn't move. Then the metal-eyed man spoke again, his voice calm and terrifying. "You have until tomorrow night. After that, We come in. They turned and disappeared into the shadows. Jace waited. Watched the screen. Counted to 30. Then he finally let out a breath. "It's okay," he said without turning around. "They're gone. For now." Rinya stepped out slowly, her legs shaking. She walked over to him, eyes filled with fear and shame. "I brought them here," she whispered. "They won't stop, they never stop." He looked at her. "I figured this would happen." "You should give me to them," she said, voice barely audible. "It's easier. You'll be safe." Jace stepped forward, gently gripping her shoulders. "Rinya, listen to me. I've done many things in my life I'm not proud of, but I will not hand over someone who trusted me. I don't care what they say you are." Tears filled her eyes. She shook her head. "I'm nothing. I'm broken. I was just owned. They'll hurt you too." He let go of her and walked toward the back room. "They'll try," he said over his shoulder. He opened a metal crate and pulled out an old weapon, an energy shotgun, worn but still powerful. Then he brought out 2 packs. Inside were food, rations, portable heat units, and repair tools. "We leave tomorrow at dawn," Jace said. "There's a place in the South Hills, old defense station. No one goes there anymore." Rinya looked confused. "You have a plan?" He nodded once. "Now I do." She stared at the weapon, then at the pack, then at him. "You're risking your life and for me?" He gave a soft smile. "No, I'm risking it for the idea that maybe, just maybe, people like you shouldn't be hunted like animals." Rinya felt something tighten in her chest. Pain, but not fear. It was something else. Something she hadn't felt since she was a child. Hope. Dawn broke slow and quiet over the frozen city. The sky was gray and the sun barely peeked through the clouds. Cold wind swept through the alleys, carrying dust, snow, and silence. But inside Jace's garage, there was motion, steady, urgent, and quiet. Jace double-checked the satchel over his shoulder. Inside, dried food, 2 power cells, and a chipped med kit. Not much, but it was all he had. His old shotgun hung from a strap across his chest. He had charged it overnight. It only had 6 shots, but that would have to be enough. Rinya stood near the exit, her body wrapped tightly in layers of cloth and the soft thermal blanket Jace had bought for her. Her silver eyes looked alert now, no longer full of fear, but ready. "We'll take the service tunnels," Jace said, adjusting his jacket. "They'll be watching the main roads." She nodded. She didn't ask where the tunnels led. It didn't matter. Anywhere away from the Gruck Syndicate was better than here. Jace pushed open the back door, leading her into a narrow alley behind his workshop. They slipped into the shadows just as a patrol drone buzzed overhead. Neither of them spoke. Not yet, though. Tunnels beneath the city were old, left from the first human colony built decades ago. Dust and moisture coated the walls. Pipes hissed with steam. Sometimes the lights flickered, sometimes they didn't work at all. Rinya stayed close behind Jace, her bare feet wrapped in cloth. She didn't complain, didn't slow down, even when her legs ached or the tunnel sloped steeply downward. Hours passed. They didn't talk until they reached an old maintenance station. Jace signaled a stop and handed her a protein bar. She took it gratefully. As she chewed, she finally asked, "Where are we going?" Jace leaned against the wall and looked down the dark tunnel. "South. There's an abandoned defense outpost, near the cliffs. My uncle used to take me there when I was a kid. Nobody uses it now." She swallowed and nodded. "And after that?" He shrugged. "We figure it out. Maybe fix the comm tower. Maybe send a signal off-world. There's got to be someone who can help." Rinya looked away. "Help? No one helped me before." Jace turned to her. "They will now, I promise." Her lips trembled. "You don't know what they did to me." "I don't need to," he said quietly. "I only know what I see in front of me. And that's a survivor." She blinked at him, stunned. No one had ever called her that. They moved again, deeper into the tunnels. As night returned to the surface, the temperature dropped fast. The pipes froze over, and the metal groaned under the cold. Their breath turned to fog. Jace handed her his scarf and insisted she take it. She didn't argue this time. After a few more turns, they found a blocked path, metal debris, and a collapsed wall. "We'll go over," Jace said, climbing carefully. "Stay close." Rinia followed, but halfway up her foot slipped. She let out a small cry as she tumbled back, landing hard on the ground. Jace climbed down fast. "Are you okay?" She tried to nod, but her leg wouldn't move. Blood trickled down her shin. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I slowed us down." Jace didn't scold her. He didn't curse or panic. He simply pulled out the med kit, cleaned the wound, and wrapped it in quiet focus. Then he picked her up in his arms, light as ever, and said, "You didn't slow us down. You gave me one more reason to keep moving." They made camp near an old water tank. Jace set up a small heat unit and laid Rinia down gently on a patch of thermal fabric. She was silent again, but this silence was different. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was thinking. After he checked the perimeter with his scanner, Jace returned and sat beside her. "Why me?" she finally asked. "You could have let them take me. No one would blame you. You don't even know me." Jace looked at her for a long moment. "My father left when I was young," he said. "My mother worked in the mines until she collapsed. No one helped us either, but I survived. Because a stranger once gave me a place to sleep just one night. One warm room." She listened closely, her breath soft. "I never forgot that," he continued. "So now, it's my turn." Rinia turned her head, looking up at the cracked ceiling. The pain in her leg throbbed, but something in her heart felt lighter, a spark of something she hadn't felt in years. Belonging. That night, as Jace dozed beside her with one hand resting near his shotgun, Rinia stayed awake. She stared into the glow of the heat unit, and for the first time since escaping the syndicate, she allowed herself to hope she might have a future, maybe even a home. The abandoned defense outpost stood at the edge of the cliffs like a forgotten skeleton. Tall towers, broken by time, leaned toward the sea. Snow had crept into every crack. Nature was slowly swallowing the structure, and yet to Jace and Rinia it looked like shelter. A place to breathe. They had made it. Jace helped Rinia limp up the final slope. Her legs still hurt, but she didn't complain. The pain reminded her she was alive and free. The front gate was rusted, but Jace forced it open. Inside, the air was dry, cold, but it felt safe. He scanned the place for traps or drones. Nothing, just dust, silence, and the quiet hum of a buried power cell still working after all these years. "This will do," Jace said, lowering their bags. Rinia stepped slowly into the command room. The old screens were cracked, but one console still glowed with weak blue light. She touched the panel. "This is old tech," she said softly. "You recognize it?" "Yes." "From before," she whispered. Jace tilted his head. "Before what?" She didn't answer right away. Her fingers danced over the console, and to his surprise it responded. Screens flickered. A small projector blinked to life. Files. Logs. Images. "This station, it belonged to the Vrix Alliance," she murmured. "My people served them once." "You remember this place?" She looked up at him, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. "No, but I remember the language. My mother taught me before they took her." Jace stepped closer. "What else do you remember, Rinia?" She stared at the console. Then her hand moved carefully. She accessed the database. The interface asked for a voice command. She took a shaky breath and said in a language he couldn't understand, a phrase that sounded like music and sorrow combined. The screen responded. "Access granted. Welcome, Celia Vryan." Jace froze. "Wait, what did it just call you?" Rinia, no, Celia, stared at the screen in shock. "My name," she whispered. "My real name, Celia Vryan." She stepped back as the screen displayed more data. Birth records. Family line. A noble house from the lost Vrion sector. Her father had been a scientist, her mother a healer. Both were executed during the uprising. She had been 5 when they took her. She had no memory of the capture. Only cold floors, iron cages, and the pain of branding. Jace stepped beside her, reading the glowing words. "You're not just anyone," he said. "You're the last of your line." She didn't speak. Her throat was tight. Her hands shook. All her life she thought she was a mistake, a slave, an object. But here, in the light of this ancient place, the truth stared back. She had been born with a name, born with meaning. Celia. They explored the rest of the outpost slowly. Jace found working solar panels on the roof. Celia discovered a hidden room beneath the floor. Old supplies, uniforms, and a communication relay half buried in dust. "I can fix this," she said quietly. Jace looked at her. "You're sure?" She nodded, voice stronger now. "Yes. I remember. How? My father. He used to say machines speak if you listen. I can hear them." For hours she worked. Her fingers flew across the wires like they were dancing. Jace watched her, not just helping but admiring. She wasn't the same girl who had shivered behind trash bins. She moved with purpose now. Her voice had confidence, and when she stood up, her back was straight. That night, as the stars lit the dark sky, the relay clicked on, a green light blinked. It worked. Celia turned to Jace. "We can send a signal to the old Vrick systems. Maybe someone will hear." "Do you think they'll help?" She hesitated, then said, "I don't know, but I have to try. Not just for me, but for others like me still trapped." Jace smiled softly. "That sounds like something a leader would say." She looked at him, then surprised him by stepping forward and placing her hand gently on his chest. "You gave me back my name," she whispered. He didn't speak. She didn't need him to. Later that night, Celia sat alone on the rooftop, staring. At the stars, she wasn't hiding anymore. Jace brought her a warm drink and sat beside her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I was afraid of who I was. But now, I'm ready." "For what?" She looked at him, her silver eyes calm. "To stop running." And as the cold wind blew around them, Celia Vrion, the lost daughter of a forgotten world, smiled for the first time without fear. The stars above the ruined outpost blinked quietly, unaware of the storm building below. Inside the bunker, the comm relay pulsed a steady green. A signal had been sent out, encrypted, marked urgent, and bearing an old royal crest thought lost, forever. The crest of House Vrion. Celia sat beside it, her eyes fixed on the screen. She didn't blink much. She barely breathed. Somewhere out there, someone might answer. Maybe even someone who remembered her name, who remembered her family. Behind her, Jace paced slowly, checking the outer sensors. He didn't like the pattern he saw. Movement. 3 fast blips, moving through the hills. They had been found. "They're coming," he said flatly. Celia stood, without fear. "Let them." Jace looked at her carefully. She wasn't the girl he'd pulled from the trash pile anymore. She stood straighter, her shoulders no longer curled inward. Her voice was no longer soft with fear. It was calm, with choice. Still, he loaded the shotgun. "They'll be heavily armed." She nodded. "Then we don't fight to win. We fight to survive." The attack came fast. 3 Grux hunters, same ones from the city, landed outside the outpost in a dark skimmer. They moved like shadows, cutting through wind and snow with precision. "Give her to us, human," the leader said through the speaker. "We'll leave you alive." Jace aimed his shotgun from the 2nd floor, hand steady. "Try me." The first blast was theirs. Explosives cracked the outer wall. Dust filled the air. Jace fired back, once, twice, hitting the wing of the skimmer. Sparks flew. Celia below tapped into the outpost's old defense systems. "Come on," she whispered, fingers moving fast. Come on. A console beeped. Power rerouted. A ceiling turret, old but still sharp, popped from the wall and fired, forcing the attackers to split. Jace reloaded, then jumped down beside her. Nice trick. She didn't smile. They're not done. The second wave was hand-to-hand. One of the Grux hunters crashed through the window. He was huge, twice her size. He moved toward her, weapon raised. But she didn't run. Instead, she ducked under his swing, grabbed a power coil from the workbench, and jammed it into his back. Zap! The hunter fell, twitching. Jace stared. Remind me never to make you angry. She looked at him calmly. Deal. The fight dragged on. Jace's shoulder was grazed. His breath grew short. They were strong, but the attackers were trained killers. Still, they held them back until the leader entered, quiet and cold. Didn't raise a gun. He raised a comm device. I've already sent your location, he said to Celia. Others will come. You've bought yourself minutes, nothing more. Celia stepped forward. Her hands were covered in soot. Her hair was wild, but her voice was clear. I don't need minutes. I just need one. She walked right up to him and showed no fear. You took my life from me, she said. You were nothing, the hunter hissed. You were product. No, she whispered. I was hope. And now I'm fire. With one swift move, she struck the device from his hand and slammed the emergency beacon she had reprogrammed earlier. A shock pulse fired. The hunter fell to his knees, his implants frying from the overload. Jace stepped beside her. That was your plan? She nodded. They always talk too much. Minutes passed. They waited. Then, they heard it. A ship. Not Grux. Not Syndicate. This ship was older, Vrick style, shaped like a bird in flight. It descended slowly, light shining over the wrecked outpost. A voice came through the loudspeaker. This is Captain Arvin of the Free, Vrick's reclaimers. We received your signal. Identify. Celia stepped into the open, her hands raised. I am Celia Vrian, daughter of Elnar and Kale Vrian. I survived. There was silence. Then, welcome home, Lady Vrian. They were taken aboard. Jace stayed quiet during the flight, watching as Celia walked through the ship's halls like someone remembering a dream. She touched the walls, the consoles, and nodded at the crew. She wasn't hiding anymore. She had come home, but not to a palace, not to a title, to herself. Days later, they stood at the edge of a new settlement, one being built by the reclaimers, away from the eyes of the Syndicate. Jace adjusted his tool belt. So, what now? Celia turned to him. Her clothes were different now, clean, elegant, marked with her family crest, but her eyes were still the same. I'm going to help rebuild, she said, for the others who were lost like me. And me? Jace asked with a small smile. She stepped close, reached for his hand, and said, You don't have to ask. You brought me back to life. She leaned into him, head resting on his shoulder. You told me to come home, she whispered. Now. It was his home, too.